66 million years ago, North America belonged to giants. Tyrannosaurs hunted through forests. Horned dinosaurs moved across the landscape. And among them walked an animal so heavily protected that attacking it may have been one of the most dangerous decisions a predator could make. Its back was covered in armor. Its body was broad, low, and extraordinarily powerful. And at the end of its tail was a weapon unlike almost anything possessed by a large land animal alive today. This was Ankylosaurus. But calling Ankylosaurus a living tank only tells part of its story. Because beneath all that armor was not a machine built simply for battle. It was a living animal. It had to find food, choose where to travel, avoid danger, react to other dinosaurs, survive changing seasons, and perhaps interact with others of its own kind. So, what was an ordinary day actually like for Ankylosaurus? Did predators genuinely fear it? Was that enormous tail club constantly being swung in combat? Or was violence a last resort? Did Ankylosaurus live alone? And how much do we really know about the behavior of an animal that disappeared approximately 66 million years ago? Today, we're going beyond the armor. We're reconstructing the world, lifestyle, and survival strategy of one of prehistory's most extraordinary dinosaurs. This is Ankylosaurus, the living tank of prehistory. Meet the dinosaurs. Get to know the dinosaur. Ankylosaurus, the living tank of prehistory. To understand Ankylosaurus, we need to travel not only into the Late Cretaceous, but back to the beginning of the 20th century. In 1906, an expedition led by American paleontologist Barnum Brown discovered fossils of a remarkable armored dinosaur in Montana. Brown was already becoming one of the great names of dinosaur paleontology. Only a few years earlier, he had discovered the first recognized remains of another Late Cretaceous giant, Tyrannosaurus rex. But this animal was very different. Archival-style expedition imagery transitioning into fossil reconstructions. The fossils represented a heavily armored herbivore, unlike the giant predator Brown had previously uncovered. In 1908, he formally named it Ankylosaurus magnaventris. The name Ankylosaurus comes from Greek roots referring to something fused or stiffened, and a lizard. The species name magnaventris refers to its broad or large belly. And broad it certainly was. Ankylosaurus belonged to a much larger evolutionary group of armored dinosaurs known as ankylosaurs. These animals had existed for tens of millions of years before Ankylosaurus itself appeared. Over evolutionary time, different ankylosaurs developed remarkable defensive adaptations. Low bodies, protective osteoderms embedded within the skin, spikes in some species, and among certain members of the group, increasingly specialized tails. Ankylosaurus represents one of the last and largest members of this extraordinary lineage. It lived near the very end of the age of dinosaurs. Fossils attributed to Ankylosaurus are known from western North America, including geological formations in places such as Montana, Wyoming, Alberta, and Saskatchewan. This means Ankylosaurus lived incredibly close, geologically speaking, to one of the most dramatic events in Earth's history, the asteroid impact associated with the end Cretaceous mass extinction. When non-avian dinosaurs disappeared roughly 66 million years ago, Ankylosaurus disappeared with them. But immediately before that catastrophe, this was one of North America's great survivors. Forget the empty, rocky landscapes sometimes associated with dinosaur imagery. The world of Ankylosaurus was alive. Forests, floodplains, rivers, wetlands, shrubs, ferns, flowering plants, and an extraordinary variety of animals. This was Late Cretaceous North America, and Ankylosaurus shared portions of this world with some of the most famous dinosaurs ever discovered. Triceratops, Edmontosaurus, and most dramatically, Tyrannosaurus rex. Imagine the situation. You are a large plant eater. You cannot sprint away from every threat. You cannot climb. You cannot disappear into a burrow. And somewhere within your environment is an enormous predator capable of attacking very large prey. Evolution offers another solution. Don't run. Become extremely difficult to attack. Ankylosaurus was built around this strategy. But survival involved much more than predators. Ankylosaurus needed enormous quantities of vegetation. It needed suitable habitat. It had to cope with injury, disease, competition, and seasonal changes. It existed alongside numerous other herbivores competing, directly or indirectly, for plant resources. Its low-slung head suggests that much of its feeding took place relatively close to the ground. While towering herbivorous dinosaurs could reach vegetation far above it, Ankylosaurus occupied a very different feeding zone. Picture one moving slowly through dense vegetation. Its broad muzzle approaches the plants, leaves disappear into its mouth. Its body follows behind like an enormous armored platform. And all the while, that formidable tail remains behind it. This wasn't merely a dinosaur carrying armor. Its entire lifestyle appears to have been shaped by being an animal that could stand its ground. At its core, Ankylosaurus was a large, quadrupedal, herbivorous dinosaur belonging to the ankylosaurid family. Exactly how large? Estimates vary because no completely intact Ankylosaurus skeleton has ever been discovered. Reconstructions based on known material suggest a large adult could have reached roughly 6 to 8 meters in length, although estimates depend on the specimen and reconstruction. It may have weighed several tons, but size alone wasn't what made Ankylosaurus extraordinary. Its anatomy was dominated by defense, the body. Ankylosaurus had a broad, low body supported by 4 sturdy limbs. Its center of gravity was relatively low. That matters when imagining how it might have responded to an attacker. This was not a tall, lightly constructed animal. It was heavily built. The armor. Then there was the feature that made Ankylosaurus famous. Armor. Much of the upper body was protected by bony structures called osteoderms. These developed within the skin rather than simply being extensions of the internal skeleton. Different osteoderms varied in shape and size. Together, they created an extensive defensive covering. Even the head was heavily protected. But there is an important distinction. Ankylosaurus was not enclosed inside a completely rigid shell like a vehicle covered in steel. It still needed to move, bend, breathe, eat, and function as a living animal. Its defense was biological armor, complex, specialized, and integrated into its body. The head. Its skull was wide and heavily constructed. The mouth ended in a broad beak suitable for cropping vegetation. Its teeth were relatively small compared with those of many other large herbivores. Rather than possessing giant grinding batteries like hadrosaurs, Ankylosaurus seems to have relied on a different feeding strategy. Scientists continue studying exactly how Ankylosaurus processed food and how much chewing occurred before vegetation entered the digestive system. A large gut could have helped process fibrous plant material through fermentation, and that enormous body would have required a lot of food. The tail. Then we reach its most famous feature, the tail club. The end of the tail contained enlarged bony structures forming a heavy knob, but the club alone was not enough. Parts of the tail were stiffened and reinforced, creating something capable of transmitting substantial forces. Think of it less like an ordinary flexible tail, and more like a biological swinging weapon. Biomechanical research supports the idea that large ankylosaurid tail clubs could generate considerable impact. But this creates one of the most fascinating questions about Ankylosaurus. What was the club actually for? Defense against predators seems an obvious possibility. A Tyrannosaurus approaching the wrong end of an Ankylosaurus could potentially face a devastating strike. Leg injuries would have been especially serious for a giant predator. But scientists must be careful. A structure capable of fighting predators does not prove that predator defense was its only function. Evidence from ankylosaurs has also encouraged scientists to investigate whether tail weapons could have played roles in competition between members of the same species. Perhaps dominance, territorial disputes, competition for mates, or other social interactions. The evidence is still being studied, and that uncertainty makes Ankylosaurus even more interesting, because its greatest weapon may tell us something not merely about how it fought, but about how it lived. The sun rises over Late Cretaceous North America. An Ankylosaurus moves through the vegetation. Slowly, deliberately, its head remains close to the ground. This scene is reconstructed, but grounded in what anatomy and fossils allow scientists to infer. The animal feeds. Its beak removes vegetation. Its digestive system begins processing the plant matter required to sustain a body weighing several tons. Nearby, smaller animals disappear into the vegetation. Insects fill the air. Birds and other feathered dinosaurs inhabit this ecosystem too. The prehistoric world is not silent. It is full of movement. Then, something changes. The Ankylosaurus stops. Perhaps it detects movement, perhaps sound, perhaps scent. We cannot know exactly what sensory cue would dominate this particular encounter, but there is a predator nearby, a Tyrannosaurus. For many herbivores, the obvious response to a predator is escape. For Ankylosaurus, the calculation may have been different. Its body is protected from above and along the sides. Its vulnerable underside is difficult to reach, and behind it waits the tail club. Imagine the Ankylosaurus turning, not necessarily charging, not recklessly attacking, simply repositioning, keeping its armored body between danger and vulnerable areas, keeping the club where it can matter. The predator approaches, one step, then another. The tail moves. The message is unmistakable. Getting closer carries a cost. Would a Tyrannosaurus always retreat? We don't know. Predator-prey interactions are rarely that simple. A hungry predator might test defenses. A young or injured Ankylosaurus might be more vulnerable. An ambush could change everything. And armor cannot make an animal invincible. But predators also have something enormously valuable to protect: themselves. A serious injury could prevent a predator from hunting effectively. And an animal that cannot hunt may eventually die. So the Ankylosaurus doesn't necessarily need to defeat Tyrannosaurus in some prehistoric duel. It only needs to make attacking too dangerous. That distinction may have been central to its survival. The greatest victory for Ankylosaurus may have been a fight that never happened. Ankylosaurus is famous, but fame can create certainty where science still has questions. Myth 1. Ankylosaurus was invincible. No, armor dramatically improves defense. It does not eliminate vulnerability. Young animals would have been smaller. Illness and injury could weaken adults. The underside was not protected like the upper body, and predators can exploit opportunities. Ankylosaurus was extraordinarily well defended. That is different from being invulnerable. Myth 2. It spent its life fighting T-Rex. Popular artwork loves this confrontation, and the two animals lived in overlapping places and times. Predator defense encounters were certainly possible, but an Ankylosaurus had much more to do every day than fight predators. Most of its life would have involved ordinary biological necessities: feeding, moving, resting, avoiding danger, reproduction, responding to environmental conditions. The spectacular battle is what humans imagine. Survival often means preventing that battle from beginning. Myth 3. The tail club was definitely only for predators. This is increasingly worth questioning. Some research involving ankylosaur relatives has strengthened the possibility that tail weapons could also have been used against members of their own species. That doesn't eliminate predator defense. It opens another possibility. Could two armored dinosaurs have fought one another? Perhaps, but reconstructing extinct behavior requires caution. Bones can show injuries. Anatomy can show what movements were mechanically possible. Comparisons with living animals can suggest hypotheses. None of these gives us a video recording of Ankylosaurus behavior. Did Ankylosaurus live in herds? We don't know with certainty. Evidence from other ankylosaurs suggests that social behavior may have varied among species and perhaps across different stages of life. Ankylosaurus itself is known from relatively limited fossil material. We should therefore resist imagining enormous Ankylosaurus herds simply because herd scenes look spectacular. It may have been solitary. It may have formed temporary groups. Young animals may have behaved differently from adults. The fossil record has not yet given us a definitive answer. Fact or fiction? Here's your challenge. An adult Ankylosaurus was so heavily armored that Tyrannosaurus rex could never successfully kill one. Fact or fiction? Don't answer yet. Tell us what you think in the comments and explain why. Ankylosaurus wasn't the only dinosaur to discover the evolutionary value of armor. The broader ankylosaur group contained many remarkable forms. One useful comparison is Euoplocephalus, another North American ankylosaurid. It was also heavily armored and possessed a tail club, but Ankylosaurus was distinct in proportions and anatomy and was among the largest ankylosaurids. Now compare it with Nodosaurus and other nodosaurids. These dinosaurs belong to another major branch of the ankylosaur family tree. Nodosaurids generally lack the huge tail clubs associated with advanced ankylosaurids. Instead, many possessed formidable body armor and prominent shoulder region spikes. And then there is Borealopelta. Its extraordinary fossil preservation has given scientists remarkable evidence about armored dinosaur appearance, including preserved body contours and evidence relating to coloration. These comparisons reveal something important. Evolution did not produce one universal solution called armor. Different armored dinosaurs evolved different combinations of protection. Spikes, osteoderms, low bodies, reinforced skulls, tail weapons, different body sizes, different feeding adaptations. Ankylosaurus represents one particularly extreme outcome. Rather than becoming faster than the predators around it, evolution helped make it increasingly dangerous to attack. Ankylosaurus disappeared approximately 66 million years ago. But scientifically, its story is still being written. New technologies are allowing paleontologists to investigate fossils in ways earlier generations could barely imagine. CT scanning can reveal structures hidden inside fossil skulls. Digital modeling allows researchers to test ranges of motion. Biomechanical simulations can investigate how forces may have moved through tails, limbs, and bodies. Microscopic examination can reveal how bones grew. Chemical analysis can sometimes provide clues about ancient environments. And discoveries of exceptionally preserved armored dinosaurs can help scientists reconstruct features that ordinary skeletons cannot preserve. Future Ankylosaurus discoveries could dramatically change what we know. A more complete skeleton could refine estimates of its body proportions. Associated individuals might provide clues about social behavior. Juvenile fossils could reveal how armor and tail structures developed as the animals grew. Evidence of injuries might tell us more about combat. Skin impressions could transform reconstructions of its external appearance. And each new fossil gives scientists another fragment of a life that vanished tens of millions of years ago. But perhaps the most fascinating question is also the most difficult. What did it behave like? Bones fossilize, behavior usually doesn't. Paleontologists must reconstruct behavior indirectly through anatomy, fossil injuries, trackways, fossil associations, biomechanics, environment, and comparisons with living animals. That means the Ankylosaurus we understand today is not necessarily the Ankylosaurus scientists will understand 50 years from now. Science changes as evidence changes. And somewhere beneath the rocks of Western North America, another Ankylosaurus may still be waiting. Today we met one of the most heavily protected dinosaurs ever to walk the earth. But Ankylosaurus was much more than the living tank of prehistory. It was a highly specialized herbivore, a product of millions of years of armored dinosaur evolution. It shared its world with Triceratops, Edmontosaurus, Tyrannosaurus, and countless other organisms. Its low body, extensive armor, and extraordinary tail club gave it a survival strategy radically different from animals that depended primarily on speed. And perhaps most importantly, there is still much we don't know. Did Ankylosaurus usually live alone? How often did it actually swing its tail club? Did adults fight one another? How did juveniles behave? What colors covered its enormous body? And what would it have been like to stand only meters away from one? Every fossil discovery brings us slightly closer to answering those questions. Because dinosaurs aren't simply monsters from a vanished world. They were animals. They ate, they rested, they competed, they reproduced, they responded to danger, and every single day of their lives they had to survive. For Ankylosaurus, evolution created one extraordinary solution: become very difficult to kill. And for millions of years, it worked. But Ankylosaurus is only one member of an incredible prehistoric world waiting to be explored. Which dinosaur should we get to know next? Tell us in the comments. And if you enjoyed discovering the real animal behind the armor, like this video and subscribe to Meet the Dinosaurs for more journeys into prehistoric life. Continue exploring the world of dinosaurs at meetthedinosaurs.net. From gigantic predators to strange herbivores, fossil discoveries and mysteries, scientists are still trying to solve. There is always another dinosaur to meet. Thank you for watching Meet the Dinosaurs, part of the MP Nerds ecosystem. Discover, explore, learn. MeetTheDinosaurs.net. Keep discovering.